Hey, and welcome to Magic Mondays here on our Mystic Road Trip. This is a podcast where I take you along with me on my mystical road trip, trying to find the things that really feel right to my soul and find my path. And hopefully I can help you do the same along the way. My name is Kim. I am a tarot reader, astrologer, meditation guide, and a holistic wellness coach. I have always loved this stuff, so I am excited to learn and share my knowledge with you guys. I do 2 episodes a week. The first episode is usually about magic, spiritual wellness, that kind of thing, and then Thursday's episode is solely devoted to tarot. And we take 1 card a week and we deep dive into it. So if that sounds cool, you found a really awesome place, I'd love for you guys to join the community. With that being said, let's jump into the shameless plugging and housekeeping. If you want to reach out to me, you can do. I have Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. There's even an email there for those of you that don't rock social media. Kudos to you. I mean that. I really mean that. If you want to support the podcast, you can like, comment, share, follow, subscribe, do all those amazing things. Or if you want to kick cash my way, I do have Buy Me a Coffee and a Patreon where you can purchase tarot reads and astrology reads and soon to be guided meditations, as well as life coaching and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you can go there and you can either purchase one of my reads, or get in touch with me and let's talk about life coaching. Or if you just want to kick cash my way and you don't want to do any of that, that's cool too. Whatever works for you. The money is going to go back into the production, so I'm really excited to get better equipment and do all that kind of stuff. So every little bit helps. If you want stuff on what the topic of today and so much more, make sure you check out my Medium publication. I am a writer by trade, so of course there is a publication for you to check out. And if you're into women and history and myth and legend, you're a feminist, you might want to check out my other podcast. It's called Where All the Ladies At. It is about women in history, myth, and legend, and it's just shining a light on them. So if that's something you're interested in, check that out as well. That is it for the shameless plugging. So that means we can jump into today's topic. Before we do that, of course, we're going to jump into our week in the stars, and this is where I take a few astrological activities of the week and discuss their energies and how to navigate them. And then we will jump into today's topic, which is synchronicity. So that's angel numbers and all that kind of stuff. Although I don't really like to call them angel numbers, but that's the coin term. So yeah, synchronicity, divine timing, that kind of thing. So yeah, let's get started. Alright guys, so of course first we're going to start with our week in the stars, right? That's what we're going to do. We're going to go through a couple of days and talk about the energies and how to navigate them. So let's start. We're going to jump into Tuesday, May 20th. On this day, Sun is going to enter Gemini, so it's Gemini season. Woo! I love me some Geminis. I'm not a Gemini. I know that sounded like I was super excited for that, but my partner is Gemini, so it's all good. So the Sun enters Gemini. The Sun in Taurus is also going to sextile Saturn in Pisces. So what you guys have to understand is that the way we look at the astrological signs real quick, because if you paid attention, I said Sun enters Gemini and Sun in Taurus sextiles Saturn in Pisces. So the Sun doesn't enter Gemini to a certain part in the day, right? So you still have a little Taurus energy happening. And then the moon's going to enter Pisces. So if you look at that, there's a lot of things happening. So let's look. So Gemini season begins. So we're going to say goodbye to Taurus. Taurus energy is usually slow and central and grounded. And we're going to jump into a season where it's more about brainy banter and curiosity and maybe a little restlessness, right? The Sun moving into Gemini kind of shifts our focus towards communication. Right, learning, social connections, new ideas. Gemini's an air sign, so that's their whole repertoire, right? Basically, you're gonna probably feel the energies are gonna shift a little bit, and it's gonna feel kind of like your brain just downed 50 espressos. So it might be good to kind of slow down. Before that happens, though, the sextile between the Taurus Sun and the Saturn and Pisces kind of adds a little structure to your vision. So this is where those energies kind of meld, right? It's basically giving you permission to like dream big, create your to-do list, right? And then if you add in the Pisces moon, that enhances intuition and empathy and dreaminess. So this is great for journaling and vision boarding and maybe having a good cry. All these energies together is actually really beautiful. It's a really beautiful energy to start thinking about really the second half of the year, right? Even though we're not quite to June, we're already 6 months, we're already hitting that 6-month mark. So really thinking about the back half of the year, this is a great energy to do that. It really is. I think the best way to navigate it is to really follow that curiosity. Start conversations, read, write, brainstorm, do all these things, right? Really take utilize that Saturn energy. I'm a Capricorn, so I'm ruled by Saturn, right? The good thing about Saturn is it is about kind of like grounding your goals and really finding the tangible. So use that energy, right? You can feel soft today too and spiritual today. So finding a way to do all that, you can do it. I know it sounds contradictory, but because of the Pisces moon and the watery magic that comes from it, you can utilize that mixed with everything else. It's a great day to meditate. If you want to do a tarot spread for the next 6 months, it's a great to do. Take out, write some poetry. Just let things flow. I think it's a great day for that. It's actually, of the 3 days, I really think like it might be my favorite energy, right? So we're going to jump ahead to Thursday, May 22nd. So Venus in Aries is going to trine Mars in Leo, right? The Sun in Gemini is going to sextile Neptune in Aries, and the Moon's going to enter Aries. So if you look at all those signs, right? You have Aries, you have Leo. Those are the two big signs. So it's going to be pretty fiery. And then you have Gemini, which is an air sign, which I don't know if fire and air kind of, right? So let's talk about it. I think hot damn is a good term for this day, right? This is going to be a bold. It's going to be beautiful. You might find yourself being a little flirty as well. Venus and Mars, yeah, that's love and passion, kind of link up in a trine, right? Not kind of, they do. And they're both in fire signs. So that means chemistry. That means confidence. That means creative sparks. It's main character energy. That's this day, right? The Sun Neptune sextile adds a little bit of a mystical element to it, right? That, if you look at it, it's a Gemini sextile to Aries, right? So intuition, creativity, dreams are going to feel very vibrant this day. You may get flashes of inspiration, aha moments. You could also feel very in tune with your spiritual self. And when the Aries move comes in, that's spontaneity and that's courageous action. So all these things is very big movement. I would say to navigate it, make sure you channel that passion into something artistic or romantic. It might be a great day to make bold moves. So, for instance, if you're someone who is thinking about marriage, maybe this day is a good day to propose, right? Bold moves, right? Just make sure you express yourself freely and authentically. Try not to second guess your intuitive notions this day. Maybe try something new. Create a project, a date, maybe try on a new outfit. I think the only thing I would say is because the energy is so go, 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 is try not to burn out. Aries energy tends to run really hot and really fast. And if you're not prepared for it, it could be very draining for you. Now, let's go to the last day we're going to talk about, which is Saturday, May 24th. Saturn is going to enter Aries. The Sun in Gemini is going to trine Pluto in Aquarius. Mercury in Taurus is conjunct Uranus in Taurus. And the Moon's going to enter Taurus. So there's a lot going on. This is a big energy shift day, guys. Super big energy, right? We're going to have to take this one by one. So if we're looking at the Saturn is entering Aries, right? This is a whole new cycle of tough love, especially when it comes to identity, courage, independence, right? It is time to mature your sense of self and leadership. You could feel called to take responsibility for personal power in all new kind of ways, right? Then you have the sun trining Pluto, and that's depth and transformation, right? Pluto is like depth and transformation, right? Conversations could get pretty intense, but not in a bad way, in a way that's going to let you evolve a little bit further. And then you have Mercury conjunct Uranus, right? And that's breakthroughs in thinking. So basically this day, I'm just saying expect the unexpected. Downloads, surprises, sudden ideas. The Taurus moon is going to help bring it all down to earth, which is nice. They'll ground you a little bit. But all that other energy is going to be very consuming, right? So I would say this day, take initiative, but do not rush. Don't jump. Saturn rewards thoughtful action, not impulsive action, right? Which is interesting when it's mixed with Aries. Be open to sudden insights, especially about money and self-worth. Let go of outdated self-concepts. The Pluto brings the energy of it's time to evolve. It's time to, you're a Pokemon and you're evolving to the next level, right? You're going from, Charizard to whatever. I don't know. For some reason I thought about Pokemon and then my mind went elsewhere. The thing is, because it is go-go energy, make sure you ground yourself with a little rest, nature, maybe simple pleasures. Maybe have yourself a little bit of chocolate, right? Whatever it is. I also think journaling could be really good. Really look at, maybe ask yourself, what am I ready to take responsibility for in my life? Those are all valuable and amazing ideas. Overall, I would say this week, it's kind of like this cosmic cocktail, right? It's quick thoughts, deep emotions, inspired passion, personal evolution. Gemini and Aries energy is dramatic. It brings movement. It has bold ideas. It's fiery. But then you have Saturn and Pluto mixed in with things, and this makes their mood, this, how would I say it? So it's like makes your magic more sustainable, right? Build the thing, commit to the change, honor your growth. If this week feels like a mix of yes, let's do it, and wait, what the hell am I doing kind of idea, you're right on time. This is basically the energy, right? So it's like, have those great ideas, make moves, do it, but don't jump full-heartedly into it, right? So that's kind of the energy for the week. And I hope that helps. That's our week in the stars. There's a lot more other things happening this week, but these are the ones that I thought would be the most impactful, right? So now we can jump into the topic of the week, which is synchronicities. So, we're going to really look at synchronicities and repeating numbers and, signs and all that kind of stuff. A little bit of numerology and all that kind of stuff, I think it's important, we'll even touch a little bit on the science and all that kind of stuff, This one could wind up being a little longer, but we'll try to keep it within the frame that I usually do, because I know you guys have a lot of stuff to do. So let's start with synchronicities, right? So what is a synchronicity, right? Some might call it like universe's breadcrumb trail. Basically, it's like the universe is trying to point you to things, but they don't want to tell you directly. They want to use like coincidences and symbols and that, right? Carl Jung actually coined the term for these meaningful events that defy logic, right? Like, let's say you dream about a white owl and then see one 2 hours later in the city, right? That hasn't had one since like 1973. That's not right. It's your intuition being poked. The universe is trying to say something to you, right? But we can go so much deeper, right? Synchronicities don't just happen. And I know that sounds really weird to say, but it's the truth. They really show up when your inner world and the outer world start to speak the same language. It's kind of this moment where energy and intention and alignment intersect, and kind of it's the universe wanting to help you reroute your soul's truth, right? So these experiences oftentimes show up in very pivotal parts of your life, whether when you're at a crossroads, maybe you have to make a choice, when you're trying to level up spiritually, And also sometimes right after you ask the universe for a sign, right? I do it all the time, and then the universe just slaps me in the face with things, you know. Jung believed synchronicities were part of the process of individuation. That means basically becoming your authentic self. Spiritually, if we look at it, they're kind of seen as markers that you're in flow with something bigger, right? Whether you call it source, the universe, spirit, God, goddess, cosmic timing, whatever it is, these signs show up as a signal that the veil between the seen and unseen are kind of just moving around a little bit, right? I think the biggest thing to think about, though, when we're thinking about these synchronicities, because they do happen, but you have to be open to them. You have to be aware of it, right? You have to allow yourself. So every morning I get up and I say, and I do say it out loud. My cat thinks I'm freaking crazy, but I do it. I say, you know what? I'm handing myself over, you know, and I'm open to all signs and thoughts from the universe, right? It's so that when I'm going through the day, little teeny things kind of happen. For instance, I'll give you an example. My mom passed away in 2018, and we were pretty close, you know, for most of my life. There were some ups and downs towards the end, but we were pretty close. And I was thinking about her the other day, and I was thinking about where my life is and how I would really love for her to be here to see it. And I was just in my feels for a moment, you know. And I live in Tbilisi, Georgia. That is in central, well, they think Eastern European, but it's really Central Asia. It's just above Turkey, right below Russia, right? So it's that kind of thing. Just to give you context to what I'm about to say, right? And so I was just thinking about her, and I was like, I wonder what she would think, right? What she would think. And so one of her favorite bands was the Beach Boys. Absolutely cannot stand the Beach Boys, but they were one of her favorite bands. And so I'm walking down this street, halfway across the world, like on the other side of the world, and this car pulls up next to me and literally is blasting like Surfin' USA. And I'm like, are you serious right now? That's synchronicity. I literally thought, and I asked the universe, I was like, oh, you know, I wonder what she would think about where I'm at. Right? And here comes this with her like one of her favorite bands, right? So that's kind of synchronicity. When you open yourself up to it and you pay attention, it's everywhere as long as you're open to it. I also think that it's a great technique for staying present in the moment. I think you miss a lot of synchronicities because you're too concerned, and we all do it with the past and the future, right? So I think in order to do this, like pausing when you notice a synchronicity and really like ask yourself, like, what was I thinking? How was I feeling before that happened, right? You know, you can also do a journaling thing. This is when I first started trying to open myself up to more and more, because I've always been pretty open, but there was a time period where I kind of shut myself off. I did do like little journals and things like that for synchronicities. And then, you know what, if something pops up, follow the breadcrumbs, right? If it comes into your life more than 3 times in one day, read it. Try to listen to what the universe is trying to say to you, right? So synchronicities, it's really not about superstition. I know a lot of people think it is, but it's more about like sacred pattern recognition. Here's the thing. Humans' brains are designed for pattern recognition, but you have to be aware and alert to do it. So once again, if you're thinking about the past, you're thinking about the future, you're going to miss them because you're not seeing the patterns. Your brain is busy doing other things, right? And I think once you start noticing these threads, you start really realize that they're not really that random. Is there random things that happen in life? Yes. I am not saying everything is a synchronicity. I am not saying that at all. Right? But a lot more of them appear than you realize if you just pay attention, right? This is just the way it is. One of the synchronicities that comes up is some people call them angel numbers. I prefer repeating numbers. And this is like when you're like looking and all of a sudden, like, let's say you're brushing your teeth, right? You look at the clock, it's 2:22. And you laugh, ha ha ha. Later that day, maybe you're like bought some stuff and your total is 22.22, right? Now you're kind of thinking that's strange. what's the message? And these patterns are known across traditions. It doesn't have to be where you're from, right? And in some ways, many people feel like they're little nudges, reminders that some things are starting to align and you need your attention, right? They're not quirky glitches in the matrix, right? Across mystical traditions, from numerology to Kabbalah to esoteric Christianity, repeating numbers are seen as numeric archetypes, right? They carry messages. So things like, for instance, like, just to give you a little breakdown. So 111, right? That's new beginnings, right? 222, balance, relationship, duality, right? 333, alignment, mind, body, spirit, right? 444, foundation, protection. 555, change is coming, right? They do coincide a lot with numerology, which we'll go into later a little bit, because each number has kind of the basic overall structure aligned. And once again, to go back to my hero's journey, if you look at the number progression, you'll see that it actually kind of does follow that path as well. And it's not just the numbers, it's the timing that matters, right? You're going to notice these during big emotional shifts, during when you're trying to resist change, right after you set an intention or ask for clarity, right? I would say with this, just like with the synchronicities, the first thing I would say to work with this is to notice the pattern, right? What's happening in your life when these numbers show up, right? Treat them as invitations, not predictions, right? You still have free will. And this is where there's a lot of argument, because there is fate and there is also free will, right? The universe can put stuff in your path, but they're not forcing you to do it. You still have the free will to choose to do it, right? It sometimes is better to choose it because, like, it's going to be more in line with you, but you can push back against it. That the universe is like, here, this is it. You have free will, right? I think also, like, meditate and journal when things like this keep happening, right? What is the universe trying to show me? Ask yourself, right? And then maybe, get a little playful with it. Numbers have vibrations. If one feels heavy or persistent, maybe explore into that, right? They're not here to tell you what to do. I want to repeat that. These numbers, these synchronicities, they're not here to tell you what to do, but to ask, really, are you paying attention? You don't have to decode these so rigidly. It's more about really finding the message and tuning it into what your personal relationship is with that particular thing, right? So for instance, like, maybe somebody else would have thought differently when that car pulled up and Beach Boys was playing, right? Maybe that would have meant something different to them. For me, it meant my mom had heard me and was saying, hey, like, I'm here. I see what's going on. You don't have to wish and wonder. I know what's going on in your life. And it was Surfing USA, which is a very freaking happy song. Everybody's surfing now. Come on, let's surfing now. Come on, right? It's like this very happy song. Maybe it would have been different if it pulled up and the Beach Boys song was in your room. Then I would have been like, oh, mom is not thinking this is a good thing for me, But it was a very happy song. So that led me to believe that my mom was there. She's been watching and she's very happy for me, right? But it may not have meant the same thing to someone else, right? So it's very personal. The synchronicities and these, repeating numbers are all very personal to you, right? I think what we have to look at is, roots of signs and symbols, right? This goes to the numbers, right? So let's talk about it a little bit. Long before Pinterest and Instagram, there's all these numerology wheels and quotes and all this stuff, right? Ancient cultures were doing that. In Hebrew Kabbalah, numbers held deep spiritual, or hold actually, because Kabbalah is still practiced, deep spiritual meaning. In Chinese philosophy, the I Ching used binary patterns to reveal flow of time. Indigenous cultures track animals and signs and patterns in nature, and we've always been in conversation with the cosmos. Our bodies, even today in this technological age, we're still in touch. It's just things used to be a lot quieter and a lot easier to see the things. So now we have to take a little bit time. Symbols didn't start with emojis and hashtags. They've been around for everywhere. They're kind of important to the fabric of human consciousness, across centuries, across cultures, from drawings to stone etchings. Humans have always been like making things matter, making things mean certain things, right? Let's look at a little different, right? So in the Kabbalistic tradition, numbers are divine fingerprints, right? Each number corresponds to a specific pathway on the tree of life, right? Try tying those together, the spiritual growth, so purpose, divine, all this stuff. The number 10, for example, isn't just a 10. It's Malkuth, and that's the kingdom. And this is where spirit becomes matter, right? This isn't just that numerology for entertainment. It's Kabbalah treats it as it's a map for existence. And that's pretty cool. I've not really gotten into Kabbalah too much. Maybe that's something I'll put on my list because I do find it fascinating. I know a little bit about it. I'd like to dive a little bit deeper. It's mysticism, so it fits right in. If we flip the script and we move from, the Jewish mysticism, we go to the I Ching, that's the book of changes. And it's another ancient system based on numerical binaries, right? I think there's 64 hexagrams, if I'm right, look at my notes, yeah, and it speaks the language of yin and yang, right? Movement and stillness, force and flow. Each line kind of talks about time itself, and it hints at different energies are rising and falling. So it's very much an important aspect. You also have indigenous cultures, right? We talked about them, Native American, Aboriginal, African, and they just didn't see signs in nature. They really lived in relationship with them. A bird flying west wasn't random. It's a carrier to message, right? A sudden shift in the wind is an omen. The land, the sky, the animals, all of this is part of a living symbiotic and symbolic web that we live in. And I think that's why, for me, when I was looking for something that felt right with me, I moved away from the more Christian-based religions because there wasn't that much of that involved, right? In this case, in many of the older religions, the older ideas, even neo-paganism, which is based off of older stuff, there is a oneness with the universe, a connection with the universe that I just couldn't find in those religions, right? Some people can, I just couldn't, So I think the thing that we can look at here is when modern day mystics, we'll use that, talk about synchronicities and repeating symbols, it's not something new. It's been around forever. It's something very ancient. The difference is we're louder, we're more digital, and sometimes we forget to ask the land and the universe first, right? I think, if we're working with this, I think maybe study where your ancestors looked for signs. Not all messages come from scrolling, and if a similar number feels personal, honor that. Take the time. Look at the cultural frameworks. Give structure. Your intuition gives it life. Don't just track signs. Reciprocate, right? Give offerings. Speak gratitude. Be in a relation with mystery. When that happened to me with that car, I was like, okay, thanks, Mom. And just by acknowledging that, number one, my day was much better, and number two, like I could feel more in tune with everything. When we trace our practices back to sacred origins, we don't just deepen the meaning. We kind of reweave ourselves into a wisdom that it's still there. It's still saying, hey guys, like you're not alone. There's something bigger here, right? And I'm very noticeable about science. I trust science. I believe in science, but I also believe in spirituality. And I think in this day and age, more people are starting to realize you can do both, right? So let's look at numbers. We're going to dive a little bit into the archetypes of these numbers, because I think when we're talking about repeat numbers or synchronicities and things like that, I think it's important to really understand, right? So vibrations. Every number has a vibration, right? And we'll go through each of those. Numbers they have qualities. They hold patterns. It's the language of numbers crosses borders, beliefs, even dimensions, if that's what you believe in. They're more personalities and energetic blueprints than they are numbers, right? So here's how most numerology looks at them, right? So number one is the initiator. It's the independence, it's action, it's originality, it's great energy for starting something, but watch for ego sneaking in, right? This is like the Fool card. This is the initiator, right? And then you have the harmonizer, the partnership, reflection, balance. That's number two. And you have to look at dualities and find your center, right? Then 3 is like expression and joy, creation. Many people call it the muse. Speak your truth, sing the song. If look, I go to karaoke every week, right? And sometimes I get into a rut. I sing the same songs over again. And then a couple weeks ago, I just got up and I just sang the song. I just sang the songs I had wanted to sing, and I had the greatest time ever. And not that I don't want to sing the songs I always sing, but sometimes, you gotta change things. So the muse, this is when you feel that muse, just do it, sing it, draw it, write it, take that leap. Number 4 is the architect. It's stability, it's structure, it's roots. You need to have 4 walls in a room most of the time, right? So 5 is the disruptor, right? Change, movement, chaos, trust, the upheaval. Once again, the hero's journey. This is that aspect. 6, the healer. It's looked at as responsibility and family and harmony. Where are you being called to nurture or restore, right? 7 is the seeker. It's spiritual growth. It's introspection, pull back, reflect, do all those things that you need to connect with the deeper meaning, right? 8 is authority, manifestation, karma. You have to align your ambition with your integrity. And number 9 is the sage, completion, wisdom, service. Sorry, guys. Something ending so something else can begin, right? And when you're talking about numbers, those are the only numbers you're going to see. But then you're going to have, 10. So 10 is technically a 1, right? Energy, but also like at the end of 9, you have 11, you have 12, you have all these other numbers, but they're always just combinations of the 2 vibrations. So 12 would be the initiator with a harmonizer, right? Kind of thing, if that makes sense. Also, this is really good for like life paths, right? So I'm going to probably do one on life paths and yearly numbers, because numerology just fascinates me. But so for instance, I'm an 8, right? So my life path is 8. And so authority, manifestation, karma, life path 8s are meant to be leaders and be able to manifest themselves, but be very karmically driven. So you'll find that like what a person with a 8 life path, whatever they put out, they definitely get back. So if you do bad things, you're going to get bad things back. They also struggle with money. And I think part of that has to do with karma and everything, but they are known to become rich later in life. Thank God, knock on wood. Anyways, so these are the kind of things that you would look at, Of course, these archetypes, much like everything else, aren't rigid rules. They're frequencies, right? The same way you can kind of feel the vibe of a room, you can feel the energy in numbers. This is what I always say, too, about astrological science. There's so much that goes into it. Everybody's like, oh, you're a Capricorn, that means you're greedy and you work too hard and da-da-da-da-da. So maybe, but not all Capricorns are the same, right? So how do you navigate the energies? I think when you're looking into numbers and the energy and the vibrations, don't just look them up. You got to feel them, right? If a number is following you around, which part of this archetype is calling for my attention? When I talk about reading tarot, I always say the first symbol that you're drawn to is the one where the message lies. It's kind of the same way with a number. If these numbers are following it, you look at the archetype and figure out which one you're drawn to, and that's probably going to be the one where the attention is necessary, right? You can use numbers as a tool. Do not trap yourself. If 5 is showing up and you're resistant to change, that's not a punishment. It's really kind of the universe saying, hey, you got to loosen up a little bit, loosen your grip, go with the flow, see what happens, right? Numbers are basically the universe kind of showing up and giving you the idea of the energy beneath the surface, right? And when you can recognize these patterns, you can almost use it as second sight. It's fluency. And if you can start speaking the language of numbers, you will start seeing all kinds of messages from the universe, right? Now, here's the thing. Symbols weren't just really aesthetic, right? So we're talking about divine timing and synchronicities, right? So sometimes that included symbologies, right? Greek myths, fairy tales, prophecies, they all had signs, ravens, eclipses, triple moons. They were codes. It was synchronicity, there was the way the universe was a matchmaker, right? So if we dive into this aspect of synchronicities as well, you have to understand that these weren't just aesthetic choices. They were kind of narrative tools for survival and transformation, right? When a raven appears in a Norse myth, it's not just for dramatic flair. It's not just, oh, we like pretty black birds. Odin's eye is in the sky, and they're scouting for the truth, right? When Cinderella loses her shoe at midnight, that's not just poor footwear planning. It's time magic, it's 12. That's 1 and a 2. That's, independence and a harmonizer put together, The slimper, the pumpkin, the chimes, all of these are signposts in the liminal world where change happens, right? In Greek mythology, omens were literal messengers, right? Snakes shedding its skin meant rebirth. The sudden storm wasn't just weather, it was the gods commenting. Everything was a conversation with the universe, right? In Celtic folklore, which is mine, symbols like the triple moon or the red stag weren't just story elements. They were initiations. They were gateways. They wanted to pull, they had significant meaning, helping the reader and the hero pull deeper into parts of themselves, If you think about it, let's just take it. We're talking about numbers and synchronicities, right? So one of the most prominent numbers in classic fairy tales is 3, right? You have 3 wishes. You have 3 brothers. You have 3 trials. You have 3 bears, right? And that's patterns this isn't random. That's rhythm of transformation, right? The first try fails, the second try teaches, and the third transcends, right? I think it's really would be really interesting for you guys now that you're kind of into this and you have a little more hopefully I've helped you out, to revisit the old myths and stories. What symbols still kind of echo to you, like you feel connected with, right? Maybe treat reoccurring signs like modern myths, that hawk you keep seeing, maybe you're asked to zoom out and see the bigger picture, right? I think also, if your life was a myth, what chapter are you in right now? What symbol tests are being offered? You don't have to live in a yurt or read Latin at all to engage with mythic language, right? You just need to slow down and notice the symbols, and because they never really stop, and they transfer into your real life, right? I firmly believe, and this isn't old, and I don't know where it came from. It's just something my mom and my grandma used to say. It's like, if you have a dream 3 times, there's something in that dream that's going to come true. There's something in there. And it was always groups of 3, right? Everything 3. And it's just something important that comes through. So let's talk a little bit about science before we dive into how to read it and what happens when the universe goes silent, right? Let's talk about science. So, as I said, Jung, right, was interested in this. He wanted to bridge the gap between mind and meaning, right? He truly believed that the inner and outer world are woven together by a much deeper thread. And some modern quantum theories kind of suggest that our consciousness might actually interact with reality in ways we can't even measure, right? So we're going to take a look at this. Let's give science some credit. Once again, let me repeat, I am someone who's kind of that nice balance between spirituality and science, right? Carl Jung wasn't just an armchair mystic. He was a clinical psychologist, right? He dared to suggest that meaning is a valid part of mental health, right? His theory of synchronicity, it was his big moment, right? He's saying, hey, not everything has to be statistically probable to be spiritually relevant, right? And quantum physicists have since backed up at least some of his kind of weird ideas, I use air quotes, concepts like entanglement and the observer effect. These all show that what we observe and how we observe it actually really affects reality, right? Basically, your focus matters is what that's saying. Science is saying, what you focus on matters, right? Every neuroscience is getting in on it, right? Pattern recognition is hardware into our brains, as I said earlier. It's how we survived as cave people, right? But just because our brain is designed to find patterns doesn't mean the universe isn't also sending them. It doesn't have to be an either or, it could be both, right? I think for me, the hardest thing to do when I first started was don't let science versus spirit kind of be a tug of war, right? They can dance. Two things can be true at the same time, Be skeptical and curious. Is this pattern recognition, or is it just something deeper trying to surface? Sometimes it could be both, right? Use science as kind of a grounding tool, and don't let it silence you. Let it anchor your magic, not erase it. You don't have to choose between facts and faith. The smartest mystics use both. And I think that when I was doing the research and I read that, I was like, you know what? That's true. That's true. Like, there's sometimes there's science that answers the questions of why these things happen, and sometimes there's not. And it's okay that and maybe it will in the future, right? Someone said science is just magic is just how to say it. Magic is just something science hasn't figured out yet. And that could be true, right? So how do you read the signs? How do you read the signs but not be a slave to them? Because let's be honest, there are those of us out there that when you get into something, you think that it's the answer and it's going to answer everything, right? I have people that do that with tarot all the time. And it's good to get insight in anything, but you can't, I've known people who have literally lived their life off of a tarot read, And I'm not saying don't do that, because sometimes the universe is giving you signs, but literally this person I knew would literally pull a card every morning and just be like, okay, this is what my day is. And whether it was good or bad, and they made a decision off it, yes or no, should I go this, should I do that? And they did with everything. And so it became like tarot was kind of like they were a hostage to their tarot cards. Tarot cards, runes, astrology, all synchronicities, all these things are not intended to be used as, I don't know, a Simon Says, right? Oh, the tarot card said to do this, so go do this. No. These implements, these signs, these things are meant for us to question and to utilize to help guide us and reflect, not to run our lives. And so how do we do that with numerologies and synchronicities and repeating numbers? You're not decoding the Da Vinci Code. This isn't about cracking that celestial cipher to make sure you unlock your ultimate destiny. It's about being curious. It's like journaling with the universe. When a number or an animal or a song keeps showing up, don't Google it right away. Ask yourself. This is about reflection. What was I thinking in that moment? How did it make me feel? Is this showing up in a pattern or just this once? Do I need to take action or just take notice, right? These are all questions that will allow you to cut off the inclination that all of us humans have, every one of us have it at some point in our life, to let an external force tell us what to do, right? That's not really using our free will. Signs aren't commands. They're conversation starters, right? You're allowed to say thanks for the nudge and just keep going. You're also allowed to say not now. You're also allowed, if you're too tired to interpret 11:11 for the 19th time that day, you can say, I'm not ready to hear this right now. I think you could do a couple things to kind of work with this. You could really keep a sign log for a week and see if there's themes that emerge. Don't assign meaning right away. Let patterns kind of reveal themselves. Don't go looking for patterns, right? And please, please do not spiral into obsession, right? Signs should really be used to expand your awareness, not hijack your peace or run your life. Reading signs is all about balance. Listen, don't lose yourself, right? The universe doesn't want you burnt out on these breadcrumbs. It just wants you to be aware enough to notice when magic is tapping you on the shoulder, right? So let's say you're someone who had a lot of signs and all of a sudden no signs, right? No signs. Was that a problem? No problem. Don't panic. Sometimes stillness is the message. You have to rest between the waves, right? A pause before clarity. All these things. Sometimes nothing is happening, right? Sometimes you're just doing the mundane Tuesday thing, right? It doesn't mean you've lost your intuition or the universe forgot your number, right? It doesn't mean it's ghosted you. Stillness is also a signal. In music, stillness between notes gives sound its meaning, right? It's healing. Rest is what allows integration. If signs aren't showing up for you, maybe it's not because you're out of alignment. It could be that you're right where you need to be, and the universe doesn't feel like they need to send you any messages. You got this, right? You might be processing, you might be integrating, you might just be being, right? That's not spiritual stagnation. It's really a spiritual growth and digestion, you know? Don't force things. If signs aren't coming, don't go looking out for it, because you will find them. And odds are those messages, those patterns, those things that you see are just things that you're creating into that. The universe actually did not send them to you, right? Practice presence. Notice the ordinary. Sometimes magic hides in the ordinary, right? That's why being present in your body right in the moment and staying in the moment is so important. And just trust the pause. Trust yourself. If nothing is happening and no signs are coming, that is not necessarily a bad thing. The universe, I promise you, will not ghost you. It may give you space. And sometimes silence is the loudest message in the world, right? So that's it for today, guys. You know, I think just don't rush to label things, right? Listen to it, open yourself up, experience it. Magic is not the number, it's in your awareness of it, right? If you really love this episode, I hope you will, share and comment and follow and subscribe and do all those things, because as I've always say, the more you interact with the video or the audio, the more it gets out there to the world, the more we can build a community and have a good time. If you want to reach out to me, you can do that also through my social medias. I have Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of those. Plus there's an email if you want to support the podcast. Like I said, like, comment, follow, share. If you want to kick cash my way, there's a way to do that through my Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon, where you can purchase tarot reads and astrology reads, and soon to be much more. If you want more on this and so much more, check out my Medium publication. And if you're into women, history, and feminism, check out my other podcast. It's called Where All the Ladies At. And as always, guys, that's it for this Monday. Don't forget to check out Thursday's edition on tarot. And as always, stay curious, stay blessed, stay safe. Oh.